Welcome to Uncontained. I'm your host, Aaron Static Render, and welcome to episode 197 and your break from quarantine. Yes, you don't have to be in commute to listen to podcasts. You can do it simply by clicking on that favorite app of yours and listening, or you can even ask your home devices to play it, such as Alexa or Google and all that fun stuff. So you can get that in your home, listen to the podcast while you're in bed, sitting on the couch. It doesn't have to be in a car or on a crowded bus or train. So I have a great episode for you coming up. It's with actor, voiceover artist, screenwriter, and podcaster Langley McArol. And we have a great conversation. It's fun. We have a very similar sense of humor where you take those moments of pain, you make fun of them, and deal with them that way. And we have a couple of examples of that coming up in the show and how people may look at you crazy while you're doing it. But, you know, that's kind of how you deal with life sometimes. And we also talk about some fun stuff too, and connections he has made throughout his time acting, like Deborah Wilson from Mad TV. There's a story containing her, and what he's trying to do right now in this crazy quarantine time to stay active, stay creative, including taking classes online. But I don't want to give everything away right now. I will actually just go ahead and jump into this episode. Make sure that you're spreading the word about it, please. It helps a lot. Get the word out there. Leave a rating and review in iTunes or whatever podcast player that you like listening from. So, without further ado, this is how Langley McArol lives uncontained. Alexa, play Uncontained.
Here's Uncontained from Apple Podcasts.
How are you doing today, Langley?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Surviving the apocalypse and everything like that. What are you doing with your sweet quarantine time?
I still work a day job, so
Okay.
fortunately I didn't lose that when all this happened. So, that keeps me busy in the mornings, and then just, focusing, trying to do some writing. A lot of writers, they kind of like that isolation. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. When I write, I prefer to be out like at a coffee shop. I need that
Okay.
energy kind of going on around me. So for me, it's proven a little more difficult to really contain my focus while I've been here.
Yeah.
So it's been, I think we're going into, this is our 7th or 8th week now in LA for the safer at home quarantine. So
Did they just extend it to July for you guys?
They did. That's what I saw in the LA Times yesterday, which I kind of saw coming.
Yeah, I'm up in the Bay Area right now, so like I could see it happening, but
Yeah.
as of right now, we're still at the end of May 31st or whatever. But I'm still having to go into work 2 to 3 days a week at my regular job. Luckily, I don't have to face customers or anything. I just have to take public transit to get there.
Yeah. And
So-
you're wearing your hazmat suit and everything. Right?
Oh yeah, the whole body condom.
Right. I love these people that walk around with their masks like below their nose, where it's
Yeah.
like only covering their chin and maybe their bottom lip, but like the upper lip is still kind of sticking out. I mean, honestly, that's like just wearing a condom on your balls. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like-
yeah, it's that effective, man. It's that effective, yeah. When I'm just walking and I don't see anybody around, I'll take the mask down, put it around my neck.
Sure,
because
yeah.
it's like okay, I'm not gonna infect myself with something that I don't feel I have right now. But when
Right.
I'm around people, just out of courtesy, just in case I'm one of those people that are carrying it and
Right.
don't know it,
Yeah.
like I'll put the mask on just so I don't have the guilty conscience of killing somebody's grandpa.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah. It's caring for your fellow man. That's what it boils down to.
it's not being a dick about it.
Right.
But, I'm trying not to turn into Howie Mandel on an everyday basis, you know?
Right.
Like, I feel weird hitting the traffic light button to go walk across the street. It's like,
Uh-huh.
oh, I've got to sanitize. I was like,
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
Next thing I'll be doing just like fist bumps all the time because I don't
Right.
want to shake people's hands.
I'm a very like kind of low end OCD and germaphobe.
Okay.
So for me, the like washing my hands is like it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But one thing I've noticed, like I know that the dermatologists are going to be doing really well after all this is done, because you're just washing constantly like that. Your hands just get so dry. So I'm
Dude, I
constantly
know.
moisturizing, and it's crazy. Especially in the
Yeah.
California dry climate, right? Like living in the
Hmm.
desert, it just sucks it out of you.
Well, I will say this though, in the Midwest, because I'm from Iowa originally.
I'm from Ohio.
Okay, so
Yeah.
in the winter it's dry in the
Right.
Midwest, and like Ohio's kind of the beginning of the East. I don't know. Do you consider Ohio Midwest or Eastern?
I've always told people that I'm from the East Coast. And the
Okay.
reason why is because where I grew up in Ohio, it was like the southeastern tip of the
Okay.
state. So, and most people that I meet out here in LA that are originally from Ohio come from Cleveland, Dayton, Cincinnati, more of like the northeast,
Okay.
northwest. But, I'm from the very southern tip of it. The apartment I had in college, I could look out my window and look right into Kentucky. I was
Oh
literally,
wow.
it was like a 15-minute drive into Kentucky. So the funny thing is, where you have Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia and Pennsylvania meeting. It's like those four corners kind of join, right?
Yeah.
Michael Keaton grew up about a 40-minute drive from where I grew up.
Wasn't he from
So
Pennsylvania?
exactly,
Okay. Yeah. I didn't remember which one of those states it was.
yeah. Yeah, and West Virginia, it took me about 30 minutes to get there, and like I said, 10 or 15 minutes right into Kentucky, depending on which path I took.
Okay,
So,
fair enough. I just tell people I'm from where Ashton Kutcher's from, and then they're
all
like,
right.
"Oh, okay." So it's like, "Oh, okay, Iowa. I don't know where that is, but I know Ashton Kutcher."
Yeah.
Let's not talk about weather or geography anymore, because this
Ugh.
isn't
Yeah.
this isn't a social studies class or you know geography class. So let's just roll on, man. So okay, so it's not as easy for you to write right now since you can't go to a coffee shop or put a face mask on and sit in the waiting room of a hospital just to get that energy.
Right.
Um, so what have you been doing
That's
to
an
try?
idea. I haven't thought about
It
that.
is. Wear your body condom and go in there. Dress as a doctor.
Right.
They'll never stop you.
Uh-huh. My little laptop on my yeah. Toot, 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 toot.
So what are you doing to try to keep those creative juices flowing?
Um. Well, I consistently take an acting class. I mean,
Okay.
I've been studying acting for over 20 years. Um, and I try to maintain some sort of consistent outlet. If I'm not doing a play, if I'm not currently working on an independent film or a TV show, something, then I have to be in class. I've got to have that. So, 2 days a week, for about 2 to 3 hours, I'm in an acting class. Um,
Are they online right now, or are they?
yeah, we're doing it through Zoom, which
Okay.
is it's been good. It's been fine. I miss the energy of that live audience,
Definitely.
especially if it's a comedic scene or something. You don't get that through Zoom. But
No, at least not
it's
as
been
much
fine.
anyway.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Most of the laughter and feedback you get afterwards, as opposed to during. So you don't really know if you're hitting those comedic beats or not until afterwards.
And plus, a lot of times too, like say the Zooms, the Skypes, and other like audio conferencing things. Like when one person is talking, the volume from the others kind of drop out, so you aren't talking over this. Like
Right.
what I'm working on right now, what I'm talking to you over is Squadcast, and it's
Hmm.
recording on each side, which is nice. So like it doesn't, you don't have that voice drop off while you're doing an interview.
Yeah, you've got
Um,
the separate channels. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's not gonna like drop out and be like, oh, I can't understand what he said right there. I
Right.
can boost the volume up and stuff like that. So that's nice. But to my point though, they could be laughing as you're doing your bit a little, but you just can't
Yeah.
hear them because the
Right.
sound has dropped off because you're the one that's talking.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, as an actor, if you're thinking about that during your performance, or if you're even paying attention to the laughs, I mean, live theater is a little different. You know, you're gonna hear
Yeah.
that laughter, and that energizes you. But if that's what you're focusing on, then you're not in character. You're not focusing on your job. So
Okay.
it's it's a balance. You got
I
to try to find that balance.
Yeah, I come from a little different background. I think acting would be cool to try. I haven't done that yet, but I was working on getting back into doing stand-up comedy before this all happened. And
Yeah.
while you're on stage, you want, like, when you hear that laughter, you got to be aware, like, if you're getting the laughs, keep going. If you're not getting the laughs, maybe read the room, maybe redirect or whatever. But yeah, I was just starting to go back and get back into doing open mics and stuff like that. Then all of a sudden, I was like, you can't do anything. But
Respect, man, because I hold such a high esteem for stand-up comedians.
I didn't say I was good.
Well, just the fact of getting up there and doing it, I've attempted it a couple of times, doing like those 3 to 5 minute sets.
Yeah.
And they went okay. I mean, I got laughs, it was fine, but stand up to me is the only artistic performance arena that just fucking terrifies me.
Really?
I am so, yeah, and I think it's my own issues. Like I hold so much respect for stand-up comedians that I really struggle with it. When I started doing my podcast, my comedy podcast, it started out to be more of a way for me to kind of do that stand-up comedy and play around with the writing and do some sketch, and it's because like my show wasn't an interview style show like this.
Yeah.
It was literally just me doing 5 minutes of storytelling and ranting comedically about absurd shit that happens in my life all the time. And it was a great outlet, but that's not live stand up. You know what I mean? Like
it's not, but in like what you're doing right there with the Ain't Life a Bitch podcast, which I dig, by the way. I was listening to it. I was like, it reminded me of Family Guy, where Peter Griffin would go on and be like, what grinds my gears, that little bit that he had.
Yeah. To be honest, that was a little bit of an inspiration. I'm a huge Seth MacFarlane fan. Family Guy, The Orville, I love all that stuff. So the way that he kind of, he's got a scene going on, and then all of a sudden he'll reference something, and then it cuts to this, the most absurd insert on the show, and then comes back like nothing ever happened. I love that. That is just like amazing comedic timing to me.
Yeah, and McFarlane does Family Guy just like perfect. There are the times where like I think occasionally they go a little long with something, like when Peter falls down and bumps his knee, and he's like, "Ow, ow, ow," but then repeating it so long, though, like you go from okay, that's funny, to oh god, stop, to okay, that's fucking funny again.
Right, it's the uncomfortableness. Yeah.
It's like okay, you sold it, I got it. Nice work, touche. But what you
the 15-minute chicken fight is amazing.
Yeah, that
where they just go from like location to location.
Man, that chicken's got a bad attitude, though, man. I'll tell you, and Peter has every right. But your podcast, dude, like the way you're writing that, as you were saying, like that material could be turned into doing stand-up. Because when I was doing radio, before I did stand-up, basically my first time doing stand-up, I took all the rants and bits I did from radio, and I kind of transformed them a little bit to fit the stage. And like, as a DJ, I kind of look back and see like, oh man, I can't believe I did that. I was like talking trash about some of the music we played, but the listeners loved it because it was honest. Yeah, so I took that to the stage, and it helped, and then I grew from there.
Yeah.
But so if you want to take some of that stuff from the Ain't Life a Bitch podcast and try to tackle the stage again once we're able to get on stage, I think that'd be cool.
Right.
So another question about the podcast. Did you do all the voices in there too? Is that all you? Because you have like a manager, you have like other like side
I've got
voices.
I've got the producer, I've got the people that in the audience that just hate me.
Yeah,
They
like,
just
boo!
absolutely hate my joke, right? Like,
What a dumbass!
yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I do all the voices, all the characters. If it calls for a female voice, I will do my absolute best female voice, and then I'll go in and change the pitch as I need, or
okay.
change the tempo if I need it to fit a certain pacing. But all the voices and everything are done by me.
Very cool, man.
Well. With the exception, every once in a while I'll use a movie clip. And one of my favorite ones, like basically anything anything Samuel L. Jackson, if I can fit it in there, for whether it's a Pulp Fiction line or something, I'll just throw it in there real quick.
Yeah, I was listening again the other day, and I think I heard a Pulp Fiction. I don't remember which episode it was, but
Does he look like a bitch? Is it that one?
No, I think it was I think it might have been a Bad Motherfucker one or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So like, yeah, I don't know. I think unfortunately you haven't had a new episode for a while. Why is that?
Well, when I moved out to LA almost 4 years ago, and prior to moving out here, I was recording. It's at a studio in Ohio called Mailroom Studios, and they had just established a podcast studio.
Okay.
And my producer Brad, who I mentioned in some of the earlier episodes, he convinced me because I had gone back to Ohio after being gone for many years, basically just to work at that studio as a segue to moving out here. So while I was there for about 8 months, and it's a really small town in Ohio. There's not a whole lot to do. I had lived on the southern East Coast for almost 17 years in a beach town. And it had a great theater community. A lot of film and television were being done there at the time. When I first moved there, it's Wilmington, North Carolina.
Okay.
When I first moved there, it was the third largest film industry in the country.
Oh.
And then everything left and went to Canada. And then some of the states started doing tax incentives to try to lure them back. So then all the states got into this tax incentive battle.
Yeah.
And now everything's in Atlanta. So
Yeah.
But anyway, while I was there, I was getting bored, and I was trying to find something creative to do, and Brad told me, he said your rants and just bitching about stupid shit that happened, whether you've just washed your car and birds have looks like they've taken a machine gun of white bullets to it.
Damn white bullets.
He's like, yeah, it's like, whatever it is. He's like, it's funny as hell. And he said, I think you should just, sit down at the mic and see what comes out. And so I went in one day with kind of an idea of something that had just happened to me that morning. And I recorded about 5 minutes of this embellished story, and I used it as a kind of a pitch pilot for him. And I gave it to him. I said, look, you listen to this, share it with a couple of people. If everybody likes it, if they laugh, then I'll, consider developing it more.
Yeah.
And it ended up, with a little tweaking and a little re-recording of some stuff, it ended up being my first episode. And it grew from there. It ended up doing 50 episodes. And I had pre-recorded several of them prior to coming to LA. And then when I got out here, I found it difficult to get clean audio out here, in our apartment anyway.
Okay.
Because we live right next to the 405. It gets really hot, so I've constantly got my air conditioning on during the summer. I ended up having to take pretty much 6 months off because it was so hot, and the episodes started falling behind. So then eventually, when I really got geared up to start what I would call the second season, it was right around the time of the presidential elections.
Okay.
And every social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, well, not so much Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and several others that I was using, they started implementing trigger words into their algorithms, mostly like cuss words.
Yeah.
So one of the main ones is bitch. Understandably, why, right? It's if you take it in that context,
Yeah.
more like directed toward women, that's not how it's used on my show. That's not at all. It has nothing to do with that. But it's a trigger word, and so advertising through social media became impossible without having to go back and completely redo all the artwork, change the titles of every episode, because if you try to share an individual episode, that link has the title,
Yeah.
and so it flags it, and it won't share it at all. Everybody's advertising through social media now. That's where everybody's getting their news, unfortunately. It's where people are paying the most attention. So that's the venue for podcasts that you really need to utilize. As I'm sure you know full good and well.
Definitely.
So it's just been one of those, like, trying to figure out, is it worth the time and energy to go through an entire design revamp, just to do these 5-minute episodes, one a week. So it's been something like, I really want to do it. I'm just trying to figure out the best possible way to do it. I'm not an artist. I had somebody else did the artwork for me, and he did it for free, didn't charge me anything. So I kind of, I don't want to go back to him and say, hey, could you completely redo this for me?
I understand that. I had a friend do this for me.
Oh, love it. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's my logo, the uncontained angry chimp gorilla, whatever. I'm not a primate expert, but it was a tattoo artist friend of mine from back home, and I couldn't draw that.
Yeah.
So she helped me out, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Megan Wagner of 10-6 Tattoo.
So if you need a good tattoo, go see Megan Wagner.
Shout out. How long does it take you typically to produce like one of the 5-minute episodes with all the added tracks in there?
From concept to finish, I probably put in 6 to 8 hours for every episode. That's, coming up with how I want to tell that specific story or event. Writing it usually comes pretty easily. That might take me half hour to an hour, depending on how detailed it is. And then the recording, I'll usually just try to do it in one take. If I flub, I'll pick up the lines. And then with the voices, I will go back and I'll basically just kind of do the first draft in my normal voice, and then and I'll leave just enough space where I can go in and edit, and then I'll go back and I'll try to find what voice fits this the best, and then I'll go in and manipulate everything in the mixing. And I'm nowhere near a sound mixer, but I've learned quite a bit just from doing the show. But I would say by the time it's completely done and finally uploaded, 6 to 8 hours.
6 to 8 hours. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And that's about a lot of the times what it takes to do this, just going through doing editing, like removing background sound and stuff like that.
Right.
Like, I don't really write out a script beforehand, but I do some research, but I also want to find out things about people, like, naturally during conversation, because I don't want it to come across like, oh, we've had this conversation before,
Right.
Sometimes, but I do more research on some than others, and if there's some where it's like, okay, I know I can probably just like flow with this guy, I roll with that as much as possible, you know. But it's good to have bullet points as backup sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so it takes you about basically a whole day's worth of work to do if you're working an 8-hour day to
Yeah.
do an episode. Now, like I know you're talking about rebranding and everything, or as a pain in the ass. Are you currently working on doing that, or is it still something like, if I get around to it, or once I get enough rage
Yeah,
built up,
it's
I'll do it.
yeah, that's kind of a big part of it. It's also, time and availability. I mean, like right now, being in quarantine would be the perfect time
Hmm.
to start it back up. I wish I would have been able to get the rebranding and everything done before this hit.
Yeah.
If I'd been able to see into the future and know that this was going to happen, I would have been up and ready, and I'd probably already have 20 episodes out. But yeah, so it's definitely something that I want to try to work on, and I'm gonna talk to my former producer and some artists that I know and see if we can work out something and kind of redo it. Um, I mean, it's been that's another thing. It's been 2 years since I released the last
Yeah.
episode, and I got caught up really busy just working the day job, taking classes, auditions. When they were coming. Um, Writing other projects. I write a lot of spec TV pilots and things like that. So yeah, it's trying to find exactly where my energy needs to be focused at the time.
Okay.
And the podcast just kind of ended up taking the back burner for a while. But I definitely really want to try to get that going again. It was a lot of it's so much fun to do. It really is.
Yeah, I bet it. Like after being stuck in I've heard more than one rant on the LA traffic and your thing, so I'm just going to use that for an example. After being stuck in LA traffic for going like 5 miles an hour for like 3 hours,
Right.
it's got to be a relief when you get home to hit record and be like, this mother.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's another thing too. Brad had pointed out to me. He told me actually right before I moved out here, right before I left Ohio, that he said one thing I see happening is he said you're gonna get out to L.A. And you're gonna end up like because I'd wanted to be out here for years.
Yeah.
Like this was always the goal to be out here. It just took me a while to do it. And Brad said, what I see is you're gonna get out there, and all of a sudden you're just gonna be the happiest motherfucker walking around the city. And he said, and he said, which is great. That's what I want for you. But your podcast is gonna go to shit. And when I got out here, I started realizing that the only things I really had to complain about were the traffic and rude people. And that was it. Like, just, rude people, and mostly they were in traffic.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, well, yeah, I don't think I was in the right frame of mind the first couple of years because I was so excited to be out here. And, and things were going pretty good. I mean, I really don't have much to complain about. In the almost 4 years that I've been here, it's been a really great move. It was the best move for me personally. But yeah, the content for the podcast started to suffer a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And, I got a question for you about your sense of humor and everything, because in a way it seems like we have somewhat of a similar sense of humor in the way where it can rub people the wrong way or not necessarily be the most politically correct of all time.
Right.
Have you noticed like a change from like, say, Ohio, East Coast, Midwest humor to out here in California?
Yeah. I won't say Ohio in general because there is such a huge difference between the northern end and the southern end. But I will say that where I grew up was very much kind of it kind of falls in the Bible Belt
Okay.
mentality. You know what I mean? So, growing up, the only kind of outlet I had for my sarcasm and just dark sense of humor was my mother and my best friend. Um, Everyone else just kind of looked at me like I was either weird or just I did not fit in. I was not, you know, I didn't assimilate properly,
Yeah.
I guess, growing up for that area. So by the time I was, almost done with college, I was so ready to just get out of that state. Um, and then when I moved to North Carolina, mainly the area that we were in, it was a beach town. There was like I said, told you earlier, there was a lot of filming that was
Yeah.
going on there, and so it was much more of an eclectic area. Um, the just the type of people that were there, they were so much more creative and so much more just kind of open and caring, and it was very much like a small Los Angeles. Um, I mean, we had so many people that had moved there from Los Angeles, a lot of celebrities and different artists who just wanted to get out of the hustle of Los Angeles and raise their families in just a more calm environment. So it was a completely different atmosphere for me. And it really helped me to just open up and kind of like, I think the first 5 years I was there was really just, finding myself. Most people find themselves in college. It took me the 5 years after college to really kind of find myself, really nail down my point of views, my, and my dark, twisted, comedic take on a lot of things.
Okay.
Um, but then coming out here to LA, because it's Hollywood, it's welcome and it's encouraged, and so I've never felt more like myself in my life than I have after moving here.
Interesting. Because my take on things, like up here in the Bay Area, moving from like in the Midwest in like Iowa, where I'm from at least, it felt like more of like an East Coast atmosphere where like when you're with your friends, you bust each other's balls a little bit. Then coming out
Yeah.
here is like I was like trying to like act like I was back home, and people would get like offended. Like, why are you being mean? It's like, it's just how you treat friends.
Yeah, yeah,
But,
yeah.
so like I see a lot more people up here that I've come across as more sensitive. There are some people that you can, like throw stuff back and forth with, but
Sure. Yeah.
it's just, but if it's difficult though, because there are some things that are dark that people will joke about, but it just can't be
Mm-hmm.
directed at any one person, you know?
Yeah, let's put it this way. This will probably sum it up. When I was 16, I had just turned 16, and a month later, my mother died.
Oh,
And she raised me. She was a single parent. Um, so that it completely shattered my world. And we just a few days after her death, we had her memorial service, and it was distant family that I didn't really know very well, but they came in for it. Um, People that I went to high school with, the few close friends I had, others came just out of respect,
yeah.
and then a lot of my mom's friends, or all of my mom's friends were there, and my relatives who didn't really know me very well got really upset because there we are at my mother's memorial. It's not the funeral, but it was like the showing,
Yeah.
the viewing.
Visitation or
Um,
whatever, yeah.
and I'm cracking jokes, And I'm like my best friend's wife will now, we were still in high school at the time, but his wife now, we were all good friends back then. She never lets me forget that at my mother's viewing, when she went to hug me, I grabbed her ass. And it was just, because that's the way we were. We were friends. We were family.
Yeah.
You know. What was it? I just what? Oh, the Peanut Butter Falcon. And one of the standout lines in that movie is, "Friends are the family you choose."
Yes.
And so, my sarcasm and my dark sense of humor on things, just my need to try and make the best out of the worst situations. Those types of people have been drawn to me. We're drawn to each other. And so, I would say 90% of the people in my life are very similar to me in that way of thinking. And so, I haven't, especially since moving out here, I haven't come across as much resistance toward that type of personality. It's really, like I said, it seems like it's a lot more welcomed out here, because I think there are so many people that they want that. They want that freedom. They want to know that as long as they're not hurting someone.
Yeah.
Just that speaking their opinion or making a joke, making light of something to try and just lift the mood. People want to do that, but I think a lot of people are afraid to. And my mother raised me to be so much more outspoken, not really just to really try and not give a fuck what anybody thinks about you. Just be who you are. And and I love comedy, and so for me, just being able to use the sense of humor that I honestly I think I got most of my sense of humor from my mother. Just being able to use that not just in my daily life, but also to pursue this crazy profession, this crazy dream, that makes it all worth it. That absolutely makes it all worth it, because I feel like I can be a genuine person, and if you don't like me, you don't like me. It doesn't. I really don't care, because the people that I have in my life, they do like me, they love me, and that's to me all you need.
Hell yeah, man! I think that we would get along, man. I think that we would get along in like real life, because when I was 27. Basically, I had a stroke of the retinal artery, leaving me blind in my right eye. When I was in the hospital for that, like talking about how humor helps, I deal with situations like that through humor as well, because comedy comes from pain. It's like, it's proven, it's like, I don't know if it's scientifically proven or not, but yeah, we'll just go with this. But while I was in the hospital, I turned to one of my friends that was there visiting, and I think my mom might have been in the room too, and I was like, well, I guess what they say about masturbation is right. I'm like, thank God I'm not ambidextrous. And then after that, my friend Doug, being the good friend / jackass that he is, he was like, hey, you want to play hide and seek? He stood in front of me, then walked to my side where I couldn't see him. It's like, that's like the humor I grew up with, and like how I deal with shit. When I put that out there and people don't that's how, when I'm going through a hard time and do that, I get those weird looks that your extended family gave you at your mom's funeral. Yeah. It's like, oh, man, the whole time you were telling me that story, I was like, dude, I completely relate to that. Yeah. So, oh, man, humor heals a lot.
It does. And you have to be able to laugh at things. I had cancer when I was a baby. I was 11 months old, and I was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. I went through almost 3 years of chemo treatments and radiation, and the entire time, my mom used to tell people that they would ask how was he as a baby with cancer and going through all that? Was he constantly crying? Was he sick? And my mom was like, "No, you would never have even known anything was wrong with him. He was always laughing. He was always playing. He was always complaining about the noises that the kid in the bed next to him was making and keeping him up at night." um, I felt really bad about this as I got older because I would think back to certain memories, and I have very vivid memories. Let me just say of being that young and little moments from being in the hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, I see everything so clearly. I remember what the color of the carpet looked like. I remember smells, all the stuff. And there was this one time they had put me in a room, or maybe they put him in my room. That's what I'm gonna go with. They put him in my room.
Yeah, it was your
right?
room, and that
And it was my
bastard
room.
came in.
And I think, looking back on it, I think the kid must have had some form of either, autism or Down syndrome, or maybe it was an OCD
Okay.
thing. But I remember he would lay there in his bed, and he had this, it was the barrel of monkeys. Remember the plastic
Yeah.
barrel with right? And they would interlock
Yeah.
and everything. And he would just sit there and shake it, and just shake it, and just shake it over and over. And I remember looking up at my mother and saying, "Get me out of here." It was just driving me so mad, and all my mom could do was laugh, But it was just that constant, like, and I was so, and I had to have been 1, maybe 2 years old at the time.
Yeah.
And I was just so aggravated. It was, "Get me out of here."
Wow. Yeah, I could get annoying though. Unfortunately, that other kid had to deal, like, not making fun of other kids'
Yeah.
disability or anything, but
Exactly. Yeah.
But
yeah.
it's understandable, man. Understandable. I could go on to, like, I had well, I'll do this. I'm not trying to one up or anything like that, but I was just relating. I was born with a seizure disorder. And, like, I was in and out of hospitals all the time as a kid. You were talking about remembering the smell and stuff, and, like, the look of the hospital rooms. Like, because of all the doctor's offices and hospital rooms that I was in as a kid, I couldn't watch Star Trek because it sounded way too sterile for me.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it was like,
yeah,
it just
yeah.
reminded me of a hospital, and I never really dug it.
Yeah.
So it was like, I don't want to watch a doctor's office. Like,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I never thought of it. That's an interesting perspective.
I'll watch Star Wars. It's a little dirtier,
Yeah.
a little bit more
Right.
like atmosphere to it. But, like, the whole, like, hearing, like, the doors open, like like with the
Right.
like, airlocks on them and stuff like that. It just, I don't
Yeah.
know, man. I just never could, just that feel that went with it.
Wow. How are your seizures now?
They're well controlled. I am still
Yeah.
medicated.
I've never experienced it. I witnessed one kid have a seizure when I was in school, and the thought of that terrifies me.
Yeah.
Like, I guess that because you have no control, right? I mean, you're just
I'm
like,
completely blacked out, so I don't know what's going on until I wake up.
wow, yeah, that just
I've been good on seizures for quite some time, though. So
good.
now let's switch back to from being like a Dr. Oz episode or something like that to talking about entertainment, man. I'm an open book, though. If people ask me questions
Yeah,
and stuff
me
like
too.
that, I'm more than happy to share it, especially if it helps,
Yeah.
like, some kid, like, with, like, a seizure
Yeah.
disorder, or if they hear you talking about having some cancer as a kid and they'll be like, oh, there's hope to get through this, And it's like,
yeah.
if I can do that, or, I'd be happy to hear that. But,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, but now, some advice from you, man. For somebody who is looking to either get started out in entertainment industry, or in the entertainment industry, or take that next step, what advice would you give them? Like, the areas that you're well versed in, like acting, voiceover, stuff like that, writing.
Well, first and foremost, I think everybody wants to be some form of, we'll say, star.
Yeah,
They want their 15 minutes of fame, right?
definitely.
Um, there are so many people out there that they it's like, yeah, I think I want to be an actor. I think I want to be a musician. Um, you know, and then they'll. I've been asked this many times from people. They'll friends, kids who are now teenagers, trying to plan what they're going to do for college and what they and they'll say, well, my son really, he thinks he wants to be an actor. Can you talk to him? And of course I do, and I'm just blunt and honest with them about how difficult it is. Because it's not, you can't look at it as a career goal. This is like, it's part of you.
Okay.
So this advice has been given by probably every actor out there to other actors. If there is anything in this world that you could see yourself doing as a profession that that you would enjoy and that would put food on your and your family's table, go do that.
Yeah.
Because to look at this as, well, this is what I'm going to do as a profession. It's not a profession. This is a life. And so everything about you has to be about that. I think that's why a lot of relationships and marriages in Hollywood struggle, because the artistic endeavors always take priority, which is a real shame.
Yeah.
And so to the ones out there who have managed to make their marriages last so long, man, I applaud them. But it's one of those, like, you have to want it more than anything else in your life if you even have a chance of having a modicum of success, because success is different to everyone. And in this business, I mean, I look at it and I say, I am so far away from where I want to be. Not geographically,
Yeah.
I'm right where I want to be, but in my career, for as long as I've been pursuing this for 20 years now, and I've had little bits here and there, a little guest spot on one episode of a TV show. I've done a lot of theater. I've done voiceover for Japanese anime. I've done a few commercials, but not enough to really sustain it as a commercial career.
Yeah.
And it comes so infrequently that you have to get your mind away from, this is what I'm going to do as a career. It is a business, so in that aspect it is a career, but it has to be something that you are absolutely passionate about. Now, once you've established that, yes, I have that passion, this is what I want, then you have to ask yourself, and you have to be honest with yourself, do I have the talent?
Yeah.
Because when you go into an audition room, the only thing you can control as an actor, whether it's voiceover, film, television, theater, whatever, the only thing that you can control is the work that you do in that audition room. That is your job. If you are lucky enough to book that role, that's the celebration. That's the party celebrating the work that you put into it. So you have to understand that it is a business, but you have to kind of know that you can't control anything beyond the work that you put into that audition. And when you walk out of that audition, you have to let it go, or it will drive you insane. And it took me years to get used to that and to really, really absorb that and appreciate. And so now when I walk into an audition room, the nerves are still there. They're always there. But when I go into an audition room, I just do my best to be present in that moment with whoever it is that I'm dealing with off camera,
Okay.
Whoever the reader is. And you have to you gotta be able to just learn to relax, not take it, you take your work seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. There's a lot of judgment. You have to learn to shut that out and look within yourself and just know that, you know what, I'm enough.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's probably a little deeper than you know, most actors I hear give advice. But that's really where it all, that's the core of it. That's really where it starts. Then I would say the very next thing is get in an acting class, and you've got to get in a good one. So you have to do your research and find out. Don't just go for who's popular right now.
Okay.
Don't just go for the ones who are advertising that, you know, Tom Cruise studied here 30 years ago. You know, so what? So what? And to me, and I really piss off a lot of people when I say this, but if I'm considering studying with an acting teacher, and I go and I look them up to see what film, TV shows, and theater they have done, if I look at their IMDb and it's less than the notable credits that I have, I will not study with that person.
Understandable.
And I'm not saying that they don't know what the I guess the educational aspect of acting is. But what I'm saying is, if you don't have that real world experience, if you haven't been on that set, if you haven't been grinding just trying to get an audition for, you know, show after show after show, then what real advice and guidance do you have to offer me? So you really have to research, but find a class that you're happy with and get in there, and because it's all about you have to have the knowledge, because if you're fortunate enough to get an audition, you got to go in there and impress them, and you may only have that one chance to impress that one casting director. And I have screwed up so many times in front of casting directors, and there have been a few that have never called me in again. And it was because they looked at me and they said, he's too nervous, he's too green. He's been doing this for umpteen years, he shouldn't be this nervous.
Yeah.
But whatever it was, I may have had a hard time parking that day, you know? You've got to be prepared, and you have to go in and you study. It's like with writing, you know, they say being a writer is just having homework for the rest of your life, and it's true. So you can't just, you know, oh, I'm a good-looking kid, everybody tells me I'm good-looking, I'm going to go be an actor. No, you can't do that. You really have to know why it is you're doing it, and you have to really want it. You have to want it so badly that if you could never do it again, you would have a really hard time trying to settle that with yourself. Not, you know, and I'm not saying that it's the end-all be-all, because it is absolutely not. If something happened tomorrow and I couldn't do it anymore, would I be crushed? Absolutely. Would it stop me? Would it end, you know, who I am as a person, or would it? No, not at all. And so I think really that's what it boils down to. The advice that I would give is you really have to know that you want it and stick with it, because it's a lifestyle. It is an absolute lifestyle.
That is some great advice, man. Now, I really appreciate you going into that depth that you went in with it. As you said, not as many actors will dip into that amount of depth.
Well, I ramble and I talk a lot, so.
Hey, it's all right. That's what editing's for. No.
And in spite of that, I really don't like to hear myself talk. So.
You know, that's one of the first things that you had to get used to doing radio, and I imagine like voiceover, which I actually would love to get into doing. But
right.
One quick follow-up question to your auditioning. You know, you were talking earlier saying your mother taught you kind of to be you no matter what other people think about you. Now, going into an audition, you have to kind of worry a little bit about what the casting director's thinking about you. Does that create some sort of conflict? Is that why you were so nervous, or?
Well, you know, everyone is insecure about something. You know, we all have our issues with ourselves, whether it's, you know, like, okay, for me, for example, because of the cancer that I had and the radiation, I have bad hips.
Okay.
So when I walk, I have sort of a it's a weird limited rotation in my hip joints that causes an awkward movement in my gait. When I'm and my weight fluctuates. So when I'm heavier, it's accented more. You can really tell.
Yeah.
And when I was growing up, I got picked on a lot, made fun of, and kids would call me a penguin. Make comments about the way I waddled and things like that. But it's though we all have those issues. If you have a receding hairline and you go into an audition, you're going to feel it's like, oh, they're just going to pick somebody with a full head of hair.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that is always on your mind. And that is the biggest struggle going into an audition, is trying to not worry about the way that, because that is their job. Their job is to look you up and down, find everything that's wrong with you, what could be perceived as wrong with you, because there's nothing wrong with you. You are who you are.
Wrong for the role.
So right, wrong for the role. So if I walk in, and obviously if it's going to be a football player, unless it's an injured football player, they're not going to give it to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to be out there running up and down and getting tackled and stuff. So sometimes I will get my audition sides, my pages of dialogue, and when I'm reading it, I used to have this really bad habit of the very first thing that would come to mind as I'm reading it is why I'm not right for this role. And it was usually, oh, well, I'm not going to be good looking enough. I've seen this show. They only cast actors that look like they should be doing CK ads. I'm definitely not tall enough, because the lead actor that I would be in this scene with is 6'1". I'm 5'4". They would have to put me on an apple box. They would have to build some kind of thing for, if they're shooting us together doing a walking scene. That's just going to look comedic. So if it's it's like Danny DeVito and
Arnold
Schwarzenegger doing twins, right? So if you're doing a heavy drama, that's not going to work, unless he's the goofy sidekick, which fortunately I do get that typecast a lot. But you have to find ways to not think that way, to just block it out. And that's where the preparation with the work comes in. If you absolutely just focus on that character, focus on what your job is in that room, and just be yourself. They want to know you. Casting directors want to know who you are, because maybe what you have to offer doesn't work for this role, but next week, next month, 5 years from then, a role can come up and a casting director is going to go, oh my God, do you know who would be absolutely perfect for this? We haven't seen him in 5 years, but Langley McArol is the right height. He has that quirky walk. He's got this very unique look that it contrasts with everybody else on the show, so he's going to stand out. Those are the ways that you have to condition yourself to think about it. Performance art has absolutely no room for negativity, and sometimes that can be the biggest challenge, is getting that self-deprecating negativity out of the way.
Yeah.
And you sometimes you literally, like my current acting teacher, Alan Feinstein, wonderful actor, goes all the way back to Broadway in the 50s and 60s.
Okay.
Terrific teacher, terrific actor, great human being. Shout out to Alan. He always says his whole thing is, you are enough, and when you're trying to do your work, and we all hear those little voices in our heads of, it's someone in our past telling us that we weren't good enough, whether it was a parent, a sibling, someone at school, a teacher, whoever. We hear those little voices. You're not good enough. this isn't right for you. You're not, you can't do this. It's okay to stop in the middle. Now, I wouldn't do this in front of a casting director, but when you're just, doing the work on your own, or you're in a class, you're in a safe environment, it is absolutely 100% perfectly fine to just take a second and say, fuck off. Just out loud, scream it, yell it, whatever you have to do, because you have to get that voice away from you, because it's not doing you any good. It's just hurting you.
Yeah.
So, you've got to be able to focus on bringing your best qualities inside and out every single time you walk into that audition room. And it's not easy. It is not easy at all. It might be the hardest part about all this.
I believe it, man. I believe it, because one of the things that have kept me shying away from being in front of the camera right now is my right eye, because since I've been blind since I was 27, it's drifting over and stuff. And I haven't told too many people that that's what I'm more self-conscious about really than anything. It's my main thing, I think, that would stand out negative on camera anyway. I'd have to be shot from the left all the time, but
well, let me tell you this information. And I actually got to meet this actor one day, just in a coffee shop. Just he was in there getting his drink, and I spoke to him. I've seen a lot of his work and really respect him. He's just such a great actor and a really nice man. I'm not going to say his name. Just I don't want anything negative to come back, but I don't know why it would be negative.
Steve
but anyway,
Buscemi.
No. No. Well, I've had a lot of people tell me when I say, I'm not good enough, or used to say, I'm not good enough for this, not good looking enough. They would always say, well, if Danny DeVito can do it. And I was like, fuck you. So, but there's this one particular actor that he works all the time, and his eyes, and I looked it up one day, but I can't remember what the name of the condition is. His eyes twitch. It's constant twitching of his eyes.
Really?
And the first thing I ever saw him in was a film where they focused on that, because it lended so much to the character that they would do these extreme close-ups of him, and it was just his eyes twitching, bouncing back and forth. And I thought it was a gimmick. When I first saw the movie, I was like, oh, that's cool that he can do that.
Yeah.
Then I started seeing him in other things, and they would kind of hide it in certain things. Maybe they wouldn't go so close on him, or they, But then I started noticing a couple of roles where maybe he was playing like a judge or something, where he was a little more stationary, and I noticed the occasional twitching. Before they would cut away, I would see his eyes do that. And then when I met him in person, it's subtle. The camera accentuates those sorts of things. So when you're just standing there in front of him, unless you're really just staring hard at him, which you don't want to do because that's just fucking rude.
Yeah.
But standing there just talking to him, I noticed his eyes naturally twitch, and it's a condition. But he works all the time, and it's a unique characteristic that actually helps him get work. And that's how I've always had to try to look at my hip issues, is that, no, I'm not going to be right for every role, but it's certainly going to lend to certain roles.
Yeah.
And so the things that we view about ourselves that we absolutely hate, we wish we could change, it's part of us. And when you're dealing with those things your whole life, it actually helps to shape who we are and who we become in the future. And we have to embrace those things. It's not anything that, growing up, I was always made fun of, and it was always something that people outside my immediate family viewed as a very negative thing. But what I've learned as an actor is that no, it's not. It's, if anything, it's one of the most positive things in my life, because it's not all encompassing about who I am, but it has certainly shaped certain paths that I've taken.
Definitely.
It's shaped my attitude on things.
Giving you more
And
perspective on things too.
yeah, more perspective, and it makes you more caring toward other people and their, their issues.
Definitely.
We've all got them. There isn't one single person on this planet that doesn't have some form of disability,
Brad
whether
Pitt.
it's physical, mental. Yeah, I mean, well, that guy's so ugly, but I mean, he works all the time.
Yeah.
You know.
So hideous.
I don't know if it's his blonde hair or his chiseled jaw or what it is, but I mean, the man is just ugly.
I'm just
He's
glad I don't look like him. Oh man, that'd be a rough life. I'm sure he has
And
his
Ryan-
own issues, but
Yeah, and Ryan Reynolds, fuck that guy.
yeah,
I mean,
looks like an Oompa Loompa.
right. I mean, get some abs already. Jeez.
I know, man. I know, and Jesus Christ, and develop a sense of humor. He's not coming on the show. Oh man.
No, I do have to say, Ryan Reynolds is absolutely one of my favorite actors of all time, and people have argued with me because they've only seen some of his more ridiculous things like Van Wilder.
Yeah, I saw that back in the day.
When you take that guy and you look at his comedic ability, and then you cross-reference that with some of the dramatic roles that he's done. I'm sorry, I think he's one of the most underrated actors of our generation.
And he did a great job as Deadpool too.
Oh my God, he was born for that role.
Yeah.
That's just he loves that character so much that you can just he's having so much fun, and that's the thing. He's bringing so much love and passion to what he's doing. You can't help but enjoy watching him.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies ever is Just Friends. Have you ever seen that?
I think so. Does it? He is an
It's
actor
him and
in
Amy
that
Smart.
movie, right? And he moves to Hollywood, gets big, and comes back home and tries to get over Christmas or something.
He starts out in a small town in New Jersey as the fat kid,
With a lisp
and he's
or
in
something.
love. I think that was like the prosthetics. I think it kind of gave him like a little.
Oh, okay.
But he's absolutely in love with his best friend, played by Amy Smart, and she just wants to be friends. She thinks of him like a brother. So it's the whole friend zone movie. That's the theme of the movie, is trying to get out of the friend zone.
Yeah.
And he, everybody at school makes fun of him, and he finally just, takes off after graduation, moves to LA, loses all this weight, and becomes Ryan Reynolds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just ripped, and he becomes a music talent agent, like a musician's agent or manager, and becomes very successful. And 10 years later, by accident, ends up back in his hometown of New Jersey, where he finally gets the opportunity to kind of show everybody what he's become, and he's determined that he's going to go win the girl that he's been in love with his entire life. And of course, chaos ensues. And it is one of the funniest movies. Anna Faris is in it, and she is so amazing to me. Every time she comes on screen, I'm just infatuated with that woman. She is so funny, so talented. To me, if you have a funny bone in your body, I'll be your friend. I mean, that's just comedy and sincerity are probably the two biggest things that I'm drawn to. But Ryan is ugly as shit. I wish he could get a facelift or something
Dude,
like that.
please, at least blur his face.
Yeah.
Soften
soften it or something for
or
us.
witness protection, program it on 2020 or 60 Minutes. Please. Nobody needs to see that. Oh, man. So what are you currently doing right now, Langley, to promote yourself?
Oh, God. Because there's nothing going on, a lot of the casting directors have been more open online to looking at your demo reels if you're an actor that they've never seen or they haven't seen you in a while. And the fact that I've only been out in LA for 4 years, there are so many casting directors out here that have no idea who I am. And I've tried over the years. You submit headshots, you submit postcards, you try to get them your demo reel. But a lot of times, if you're not with an agent that they work with out here, they don't care. They're not going to look at it.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if it's just a general submission. But since the quarantine, a lot of casting directors are trying to fill their time creatively, and they're looking to the future. So they're using Zoom and FaceTime and all these other outlets to do kind of like these free casting, sort of like a meet and greet, or they'll do some workshops for low pay, sort of things, just to keep the actors moving. They're doing open calls where you can submit like a one. Some of them are 1 minute. Some of them are, they might have like a 5-minute limit monologue or scene, so that it gives them a chance to look at an actor they've never seen before and say, okay, I need to keep him in my file. So I'm trying to take advantage of those. I'm not putting a whole lot of weight into them.
Yeah.
It's not, it's really more something fun. And it's like, hey, if they watch it and they like me, they'll make a little note and say, yeah, we'll try to call him in when a role is right.
It can't hurt, man, to get yourself out there.
Exactly. And that's the thing. You got to be seen any way you can. You just have to, and try to be seen in a positive light. My agent and I keep up with each other on Facebook and email. She's really awesome. She'll send out an email every once in a while to just kind of check on her clients and, hey, do you need anything? Are you doing all right? So just keeping up those relationships. As far as the self-promotion, that's about all I've done so far, because we're so limited since there's no work.
Yeah, exactly.
We can't. It's like, hey, I want to work on this show. Well, they're sitting at home going, yeah, me too. It's my show and I can't work on it right now. So it's, you just have to try to find creative ways to just get yourself out there. This is a fun thing. This is why I kind of jumped at this. I was like, hey, it'd give me a chance to talk to you and make a new friend. And,
yeah, dude.
And just kind of, hopefully people will listen to me rant.
I sure hope so. I haven't had one listener yet besides my mom. But she'll love you. No.
Good. Wait, what's her name? I'll say hi to her.
Her name's Julia.
Hi, Julia. It's nice to meet you.
She probably will listen. So it may not be right on time, but she listens to all of them. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I liked this one, but I didn't like that one so much. You were talking about this and that. So I might hear a couple of those subjects, but overall I think she'll like the episode. I think it'll get the mom stamp of approval. But my mom's a pretty cool lady. I don't want to make her head too big by going into it too much. So
Right.
But yeah, so dude.
And she's like, no, I raised you. Compliment me. Come on.
Yeah. It was just Mother's Day, so Mom, love you. Happy Mother's Day. It may seem really late by the time this comes out, but oh man. All right. So now this next question is like a two-part question. It is, what is a hardship that you've had to deal with that you care to share? And also, what is a highlight you care to share with the Uncontained audience?
The hardships, it's, you kind of, God, if you have to like pick and choose through life is hard for everybody.
Is there something you kind of overcame and made the best of?
It's been a chain of events. Growing up with a single mother.
Yeah.
I never knew my dad. He bailed. He was never in the picture. Going through cancer the first 3 years of my life. I spent my first 2 Christmases and birthdays in the hospital. My mother's parents, my grandma and grandpa, they had a hand in raising me. I spent a lot of time, with all 3 of them. By the time I was 16, they were all gone. Or, my mom died a month after.
Wow.
Um, and my grandma had died 2 months before her, and my grandpa had been in a nursing home for already like 2 or 3 years. So, I was orphaned at that point. I went through about 2.5 years of foster care, moved 7 times in that period, um, and then graduated high school, put myself through college, and then when I realized in college what it was that I wanted to do, that was it for me. And
Yeah.
so I left Ohio. I moved to North Carolina with my best friend from college, and he was there for almost a year and ended up going back. So after that, I was there, by myself. So literally, I was, on my. That was when I was literally on my own. Didn't still after a year didn't really know very many people in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And I want to say the reason I moved to North Carolina at the time was I had gotten a scholarship to a drama school in New York. It was an audition scholarship, and I couldn't come up with the remainder of the tuition in time to go. So it was either stay in Ohio and be miserable. Um, I didn't have the money or the connections to move to New York or LA on my own. And my acting coach in college at the time had told me about Wilmington and all the like Dawson's Creek and what else was like there was a lot of movies like Firestarter and things like that had gone on there. Matlock was there too. Um, and so he convinced me to go down there and just try to do some like independent film and theater and just build a resume, try to make connections, and then eventually move to LA. So anyway, now back to so the hardship. The hardship is just life, and I think it's that way for everybody. And um, it's just trying to find those moments of silver linings that each one of the hardships, quote unquote hardships,
Yeah.
bring you. And it's about your perspective and how you deal with those things. I didn't deal with those things very well early on, but as I got older, I learned, and as much as I hate that I had to go through those things, at the same time, like I said earlier, they shaped me.
Definitely.
They made me who I am, and as a person, I mean, I'll self brag for a minute. I'm pretty proud of the person that I am today,
That's awesome.
and a lot of that is attributed to my mother and what she instilled in me in those first 16 years, and then the friends that I have made, I mean, that have become my family over all these years. Their love, support, their guidance, the arguments we've had, the like everything, and still, um, after all these years, my friends are still my friends, and so yeah, I mean the hardships of life is just you got to plow through them and just try and learn something from them as opposed to you know, letting them get you down and be depressed about it and whine and complain and because it doesn't do you or anybody else any good.
Yeah.
You got to try to you break an egg, you got to try to make a cake, and so and then the silver linings. I mean, in life that would be my friends. They're probably the most important thing to me.
Nice.
Acting being my number one passion in life, that's my selfish need. That's what I need for me.
Yeah.
But if that were taken away tomorrow, I would still have my friends. So ultimately, they are absolutely what is important in my life, and I don't always do the best job of showing them that, but it is true. And when they need me, I do my damnedest to be there in any capacity that I can. Silver linings in my career would have to be some of the people that I've gotten to work with. Especially growing up, just loving comedy. I used to watch In Living Color all the time.
Yes.
I mean, that was, of course I watched Saturday Night Live, but In Living Color and Mad TV were probably the two biggest ones for me. I don't know what it was about their style of sketch comedy. It was different, and the individual players were just so interesting to watch. So I eventually I got to work on the first episode of a CBS series called Reckless, and I got to work with Kim Wayans of the Wayans
Okay.
family. Um, and I knew her from In Living Color and Don't Be a Menace to South Central while drinking your juice
I
in the
love
hood.
that movie.
and
Message.
and she message and she was so nice, and I had such a great time working with her. She was so sweet. And then Deborah Wilson from Mad TV. She was on that show. She was one of the original cast members, and I think she was on it for like at least the first decade, maybe
Yeah.
longer. And she used to play Oprah Winfrey and Whitney Houston, and she can sing. She's an amazing voice actress. She works all the time as a voice actress. Deborah and I ended up just connecting because I started out just being a fan, being an admirer, and we just sort of bonded over social media. And when I moved out to LA, I had every intention. I was going to just try and track her down because she had actually gotten rid of all of her social media. She needed a cleansing, and she had messaged me beforehand, and she said, I'm getting rid of all my social media pages. I need to take a very much needed break, but you have my information. Keep in touch with me. Well, the thing of it was, I didn't have her information. She thought she had given me like her cell phone and all this stuff, and she didn't. Right? Like we had just never even discussed that. And so by the time I was able to reply to the message, she had already shut her Facebook down.
Man, rough.
So I thought, oh, okay, all right. Well, when I move to LA, one thing I'm going to do is I know who her agent and her manager is. I will go to them and I'll just say, hey, could you get this message to her and just let her know that I live here now and I'd love to touch base with her. So I was here for almost a month and I hadn't done that, and I found a Starbucks nearby that I enjoyed going to in the mornings to do my job hunt and do some writing and things like that. And I'm sitting outside one day and I was thinking about her, and this is how like small Los Angeles really is. I'm sitting outside and I just started thinking about her, and I was like, oh man, I've got to reach out to her agent and try and track her down. No more than 5 minutes later, I just happened to look up and I see these two women walking past Starbucks. And I thought, that one kind of looks like Deborah. And then as she turned the corner and kind of came a little bit closer to, in my line of sight, I realized, oh my God, it is her. And I jumped up and I ran around all these people sitting there and everything to get outside of the Starbucks area. And by the time I got out there, she was already like at the next block. She had already like gone through the light and everything. She's standing on the corner of the next block. And I thought, she is going to think I am just some insane person. And I screamed out, Deborah Wilson! And she stops and she turns around and she had sunglasses on. And I could tell she's like squinting, like trying to
Is this a
see
nut
through
job
her.
or somebody I know?
Right. And all of a sudden, she gets this big smile on her face, and she screams, Langley McArol, oh my God, and she comes running. And she and I have been close friends ever since.
That's awesome.
She did a table read for me of a comedy, a sci-fi comedy pilot that I wrote, and she came in and read one of the lead characters, and she was absolutely amazing. She is such a sweet person. It's highlights like that if I hadn't, chosen to be an actor, if I hadn't pursued certain things, if I hadn't had the guts to reach out to her through social media and, fan mail via the internet, and just clicked with her. She's such a genuine person. The fact that I am friends with one of the people that I grew up watching and admiring and just, adoring their comedy and their sense of humor, and now we're friends, and that's just such a cool thing to me.
Definitely, dude.
It's, I could go and I could work on a set with, you know, Travolta or DiCaprio or any of those guys, and it would be amazing. But to have the personal connection that I have with certain people that I have met through this industry, man, that makes it all for me.
That is awesome, man. That is awesome. That's quite the highlight right there too. Like running into her, making that connection again.
It was just so cool, yeah. And we've talked about it, like how just how I guess it was just destiny that we were supposed to be friends, because for and I was on a side of town that she says she's never on.
Really?
She was only there because she had offered to help a friend and drive them over to a store that just happened to be over there. And she's like, I'm never over here. She's like, this is a 1 in a million thing. And she said, you just happened to have picked that Starbucks that day to go,
Yeah.
And the fact that I was just thinking about her 5 minutes before, it was just such a crazy thing.
Did she ever tell you if she thought you were a crazy person at first, just yelling her name, or was she like?
Oh yeah.
Was she like, I thought I was gonna get attacked, and then I recognized you?
Probably. I think she thought it was probably just some fan or maybe somebody she had worked with in the past or something.
Yeah.
But there's always that hesitation of, oh wait a minute, who's stalking me?
Should I be reaching for my mace? Very cool, man. So, now when you are currently not currently because you can't do anything really right now, but when you are performing, whether it's voiceover, whether it's acting, whether it's screenwriting, is there something that you want the consumer or the watcher to take away from your performance or remember about your performance?
Well, I mean, let's face it. It's all about me.
Of course. It's all about Langley, always.
It's all about me. So, even if I just have one line, it's my line, it's my scene.
Yeah.
So, no.
Of course.
No, honestly, I mean, whether it's a comedy or a drama, if I'm just doing my part to make that that production whole, you don't want to be the guy that's so into himself you go out and the performance is all about you and then you stand out for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
You've got to be collaborative, and the whole thing is collaborative. No person on a set, and I know many people in the industry would disagree with me on this. No one person is bigger than the whole. And, it's all about just doing the best possible work that you can, bringing your best self to it, and hoping that the audience or the spectator is being moved in some way, in a positive way. If it gets them thinking about something positive that maybe they never considered before. One of the things for me when I go see a show or a movie is I love being moved.
Yeah.
Whether if they're making me laugh, I'm having a good time. If something in that moment I connect with makes me cry, it reminds me that I'm not the only one that feels that certain way that maybe the character is trying to portray. And to if the actor is doing their job and they're being convincing,
yeah,
and I can relate to them, it's healing. It's a healing thing to be able to sit there and even just watch a movie on Netflix and just be moved by some I'm a hopeless romantic anyway, so being moved by some romantic gesture that one character does for another, and some of it can be the sappiest, most melodramatic crap, and I will sit here and bawl like a baby for about 5 minutes because I was moved, and then then I'm laughing again. It's about the experience, and if you can give an audience member an experience that they're going to remember, then you have done exactly what an actor's job is to do. I think too many actors forget that, and it does all become about themselves.
Yeah.
I'm the star, but it's not about us. It's about the audience. It's about the people that are paying money to watch us. And when you're lucky enough to make a paycheck to do that, oh my God, that is the dream. That is the success. Even if it just happens one time in your life, if that has been your pursuit and you finally get to make that happen, you're successful.
Yes, that's awesome, man. That's awesome, man. Just being able to take somebody on that roller coaster of emotion that you were talking about, that you experience as a viewer, would be pretty awesome. Have you ever watched something you're in with somebody else and just kind of watch them to see if they go through the roller coaster of emotions, or are you like, no, I don't want to because I don't want to be staring at them like, are you going to laugh now?
I'm not one of those that refuses to watch themselves. I actually enjoy watching myself only for the purpose of finding what I could have done better.
Yeah.
And then take that to the next job, right? So having my friends sit there and watch it with me is a little awkward. I would rather, I'm kind of clinical when I watch myself. So I would rather they stay home or if I'm doing a play, fortunately I can't see their faces.
Yeah.
And if one of those assholes decides they're going to sit in the front row and smile at me the whole time, then I do everything I can to block them out. Yeah, and the good thing is I have a group of friends that I value their opinion.
Yes.
And they don't bullshit me. So if they do see something that I've done, and I ask them, and usually my question is, was this okay? It's not, how fabulous was I, or, oh man, did you think I sucked? It was that okay?
Yeah, like,
and
what was your honest opinion of this?
Yeah, and as long as they approve, as long as they say, yeah, man, you made me laugh, then that was good enough for me,
Perfect.
Yeah, it's
and if you have good friends, they'll make fun of you a little bit for it too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's usually followed up. It's like, yeah, man, you made me laugh, mostly at the way you look, but
yeah,
you made me laugh.
Of course.
And to me that. And that's the way that I treat my friends and the people that I care about. If I am sarcastic with you, if I make fun of you, that just means I love you.
Exactly.
I try. I don't like to throw "I love you" around like it's an old newspaper or something. When I say it, I genuinely mean it.
Yeah.
And it may be for various reasons, whether it's a girl that I'm attracted to, or if it's just somebody that I just want them to know, hey, I love you. You're not alone. When I am sarcastic with somebody, it's because I feel so comfortable enough around them to be myself, because I know that they know anything sarcastic or un-PC that I say to them or around them, they're not going to judge me, and they're not going to say, oh, this, he's an asshole, I didn't realize he was like this, or, oh my god, what a racist statement to make, or, no, it's like, they know he's just being an asshole, because he's trying to get the laugh. That's all it is. It's trying to make people feel uncomfortable enough that they're comfortable around me.
Yeah, uncomfortable enough they feel welcome. Uh,
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
not going to go into because listening to you sounded like me talking right there. Just like stuff that I've said multiple times, and like I tell this
Yeah.
story. I've probably told this on the podcast, but I'm not sure. I just remember the first time that I was riding in the car with my then girlfriend, now wife, and one of my friends from back home called Doug, same one that made the blind joke. And I answered the phone. Hey, what's up, you Irish fuck?
Yeah.
And like she turns to me and is like, "You talk to your friends that way?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "What do you say to people you don't like?" I'm like, "Nothing. I just don't
Right.
talk to them,
Yeah.
unless
Yeah.
I have
And
to." And,
and if you do, it's just like a courtesy, professional. Hi, nice to meet you.
yeah.
Good seeing you. Good talking to you. Hope to see you again. And then you walk off and forget them 5 minutes later.
And then when you
But
make fun of somebody,
yeah.
it's how you know they care. Uh,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it, man.
Yep.
I love it. All right,
Yeah.
dude. I've had a blast talking with you today, man.
Yeah, man. Me too.
Thank you. Before I ask the final question, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Langley McArol, LangleyMcarol, or you can find me on Instagram at L McCarroll.
All right, and where can they find your podcast if they want to go back and check that out?
And you can check out my podcast, Ain't Life a Bitch podcast, on iTunes and Google Play.
All right, perfect. And I believe I've listened to it on Himalaya as well, so if you have that app, check it out. All right, we went a little bit over the hour that I said it would be, like by about 45 minutes,
I
but
told you I ramble a lot.
it's all good. It's all good. It's better than I know in your podcast you have an episode about yes and no when a simple yes and no answer will do.
Yes.
That is the
Yes.
worst thing for podcasting though. Like but yeah, in normal situations if somebody you ask somebody like, "Hey, what's your age?" "Well, I'm I technically feel this age, but I'm this age and that age and this age." Yeah, then it does get old. But if I just ask you, "So Langley, what do you do? Do you act?" "Yes."
Yeah.
That'd be a pretty crappy podcast. So I appreciate you rambling in this instance, and also in that rambling came a lot of great information. So I got that one final question for you. It's the title question of the show. Langley McArol, how do you live uncontained?
I live uncontained by just trying to be myself and don't apologize for it. You know, I once I figured out what I wanted to do with my life, there was no stopping me. My friends kind of compare me to a bulldog that doesn't want to let go of the chew toy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I approach things in life. If it's something that I want, if it's something I'm passionate about, you get the hell out of my way. Because it may take me years, it may take almost my entire life, but eventually I'm gonna get it.
Nice.
And just be true to yourself and be true to the people around you, and the people that care about you, and just don't let anything stop you, and don't it's so hard. I mean, it's so much easier to say than it is, because it's the true epidemic of life, I think, is not beating yourself up over shit that you can't control, you know. And you just gotta learn to let go and just I don't want to say just be happy, because that's something different to everybody, but you just gotta just be and be who you are, and don't apologize for it. And I mean, unless you're hurting somebody. If you hurt
Yeah.
somebody, then get the hell out of here. You don't belong here. But man, just go out and be the best kind of person you are, and be good to others, and good shit's gonna come to you.
Nice, man. I like that. I like that. It's kind of like Langley, Buddha, McCarroll. Just be. Uh, I just am. So
Well, I've gotten some good advice from some good friends over the years, so
Perfect, man. Perfect. That's always good to have friends that are experienced in what you're trying to do as well to
Yeah.
get that feedback, get that valuable advice. And you may even get some great advice from somebody who's not involved in what you're doing as well, just
Yeah,
life
no,
advice.
and a lot of my friends, especially the ones that have been my friends for 20 years or more, they have absolutely nothing to do with this industry. One or two of them do, that's kind of how we met early
Yeah,
on, but the majority of them don't, and they don't really get my world, but they understand what I do, and they support what I do, and they just, I'm very fortunate, man. I have people in my life that love me for me and not what I do, and
definitely.
yeah.
Definitely, man. Well, dude, it's been great. It's been great talking to you. A great way to spend a quarantine afternoon. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well.
I did, man. I did.
Um,
I really did.
I have that one final thing for you to do, though, and
Yep.
that is sign off the show. Will you do me the honor of signing off the show today, Langley?
Absolutely, man. Check out the first season of the Ain't Life a Bitch podcast on iTunes and Google Play. 50 episodes on there. If you like it, please subscribe. Follow my social media pages. They're mentioned in the podcast. And share with friends. And if I can get my numbers up, I may just knock out another season. And I'm Langley McArol, and I live uncontained.
And that does it for another episode of Uncontained, coming to you from containment. That's right. Hopefully, you're getting out, moving about, staying active anyway. Take the podcast with you as you walk, as you jog, in your commute if you have to go to work, or you can even do it on one of your smart home devices. All you got to do is say, "Hey, Google, play Uncontained," or Alexa, or whichever home system you have. You should be able to link to Uncontained that way. I appreciate you listening and spending your time with me today. I do have more episodes on the way, as always, creeping up on 200. Yes, getting ready for that mile marker right there. And yeah, I'll tell you. I'll tell you who's going to be on my 200th episode. The same guy who was on my first episode and my 100th episode, Tom Garland. Yes, a comedian that I know from back in my Iowa days, and now he's tearing up Vegas when there's no quarantine. Right now, well, we kind of have to talk about that a little bit during that episode, and we'll keep on entertaining you here on Uncontained. So please come back, bring a friend, tell some friends about us, have them log in, listen, and until next time, live uncontained, even in containment.